What's going on, everybody? Today I'm joined by my guy, James Lynch. Let's get started.
Now fires back. Oh, there's Fury with the right hand. Wilder's hurt. Wilder's hurt. He wildly almost fell over into the ropes. He is close to going out.
James, how's it going, man?
It's going well after seeing that intro. I feel like I need to go run around the block or something. What a compilation that was.
Yeah, that was something I came up with. Well, the guys that do the Combat Lounge with me and myself, we came up with before even doing the media thing. So I haven't changed it out or anything like that, but everyone says they like it.
Yeah, no, it's great. I love it. I love always seeing those knockouts, especially that Leon Edwards knockout. That was incredible. So anyways.
Yeah, that was incredible. That was crazy. That actually happened in Utah, which will actually
segue. Good media move there. I like that. Good segue. Speaking
of I kind of that was a good opening topic, actually. You got Dustin Poirier, Justin Gaethje, a rematch, two guys that like to just slug it out. Why do you think the UFC decided we'll do this fight in Utah? Because last time they did a card in Utah, it seemed like every fighter, not every, but a lot of them had like cardio issues as we got into the later rounds of the fight because of that elevation.
My understanding is, and this is just what I've heard behind the scenes, is that the UFC really likes Utah. I guess they treat them very well when they're there. I think it's going to be an annual destination for them is kind of my understanding. So I think it was just the timing of how things worked out where they wanted Dustin and Justin to fight each other. This seemed like the right card to do it. Maybe July international fight was too soon, early July, I should say, because we're still in July. I keep forgetting that, but I think that was the reason they did it. But like, I agree with you because I don't know if we'll talk about it today. Why is Derek Lewis fighting at elevation? That's something I would love to know who made that decision with Derek Lewis fighting at elevation. Cause I just like, that's not a good mix. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I can't disagree with you there. I mean, when I look at that fight, I'm like, that's got to be like a first round finish fight, or
we're gonna get heavy breathing for 3 rounds. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like if it doesn't end up in a finish, right? So
no, I totally agree. That's an interesting fight. Some of these guys on this card too have been guys that have, and nothing against them, but some of them have gassed in Vegas or, other spots that aren't this high of elevation that are on this card. So I think this card has a lot of up in the air fights, I should say, where it could go either way. And that's probably going to play a huge factor in some of these fights. And I don't think people are really taking that into consideration. But I'm excited for this card. I know we were talking about it backstage, but, just from top to bottom, this is a very well-rounded card all the way through. You were even saying that you thought it might be, with the names on it, better than 290. 290 delivered. We'll see if this one delivers just like 290 did.
Yeah, this card has like the sizzle. You know what I mean? Like 290 was a great card. And like, if you look at it top to bottom, like it's a hardcore fans card. This card is like, I think more the type of card that would bring like the casual fans in. Like you have your Tony Ferguson, you have Jan Blachowicz, the former champ. You've got Gaethje and Poirier, like them alone is like a huge fight and a big rematch. Like even, you've got Stephen Wonderboy Thompson on this card. Like there's so many guys on this card that have headlined UFC events in the past. To me, that gives it that like extra, no pun intended, punch to the card that people are going to get interested in. So I think name value wise, this is better than 290, but it's pretty hard to top 290 as well with the way everything finished. And we were talking about this off air.
Yeah. Speaking of Tony Ferguson, he's lost his last 5 fights.
Yeah.
and now he's taking on Bobby Green. What do you make of that fight? Because it's kind of interesting to me because it's back at 155. His last fight was at 170. Uh, a lot of people don't think Tony should keep going because they think that he's in his own way. He's too good for himself. Like he's gonna end up getting himself hurt. I kind of like this Bobby Green matchup for him. I don't know what about it I like about it, but I just think like it's different than his last 5 opponents he's fought because I think people forgot he's fought, I don't know, his last 5. I think it's like Charles, Michael Chandler, Gaethje,
Dariush. Yeah.
Dariush, and then Nate Diaz, of course. That's a tough 5 stretch, and I just think Bobby Green, nothing against Bobby Green, but he's not of that caliber of an opponent for Tony. So I kind of like the fight for Tony. What do you think?
Yeah, I prefer this over him fighting like a prospect. Like the UFC could have easily done what they've done with a number of veterans, which is just give them, like, look what happened with Kevin Lee, right? They gave Kevin Lee in his return fight, Renat, who's like one of the toughest guys on the roster, and they're building him up basically. They could have done that with Tony. They didn't, which I like. So this is like a throwback veterans fight. Like you've got Bobby Green, who's been around forever. He's been fighting in the UFC for so long and Strikeforce before that. So, you get 2 of these veterans coming together and glad to see they gave him that type of matchup. The big question is, like you mentioned, is what type of Tony Ferguson are we going to get? Like we talk about the opposition. I mean, that's a killer's row: Chandler, Poirier, Chandler and why am I losing my mind here? Yeah, sorry, Chandler, Dariush, Oliveira, Gaethje. Sorry, I was thinking Gaethje and Poirier, so I got mixed up there. And then, like, here's the other weird thing. Like the Michael Chandler fight, he looked really good in the first round, right? Like I think everyone was like, man, the old Tony's back, and then he gets knocked out in the second round. But then he fights Nate Diaz, and granted, I'll cut him some slack with the fact that his opponent got switched up. It was in a different weight, like at 170, which he's not used to fighting in. That was a bit of a weird fight, but he just looks so not great in that fight, and that was a bit concerning. So I just wonder how he's going to look against Bobby Green. Now, Bobby Green, the Jared Gordon fight, we got like a little snippet of that. Didn't look amazing there. Obviously got knocked out by Drew Dober the fight prior to that, and then he lost to Islam. The Islam fight we can kind of throw out the window just because a lot of people are going to get finished by.
Of course.
I just wonder too where Bobby Green is at, because we're not that far removed from him beating Nasrat or him having a good third round against Fiziev. Like I think Green is still a guy that could possibly beat some ranked opponents in the weight class. I don't know about that about Tony Ferguson. So there's a lot of unknowns here, but I think the main thing is that we're going to get a good fight with their styles. I think it'll be entertaining. I just hope it kind of delivers, based off some of their past performances.
Yeah, when I first saw this fight, I thought to myself, standing up wise, I would probably right now in their careers favor Bobby Green, maybe, just because he might be a little bit quicker and faster. But Bobby's takedown defense has always been usually pretty good, but if Tony can get it to the ground, then it really favors Tony, in my opinion. It's an interesting fight. I can't really put a winner on. I think it's just it's going to be fun for the fans because, like you said, it's an old veteran fight.
And here's the other thing we got to bring up, because I always mention this. Tony's known for submitting his opponents. Well, it's a 3-round fight, so chances of getting a finish maybe not as great as 5 rounds. But you have to go all the way back to 2009, the last time Bobby Green's been submitted. Like, it's been that long. So I do wonder what's the path to victory here. I think if you're going to bet this fight, I think it might be worth taking the over, or even the fight goes the distance. I know that's nuts because these two guys are very action packed, but I just think like Tony has not finished someone in a while. Even his last win, I guess, was Cerrone. That was a doctor stoppage, eye injury. I don't know if Bobby Green's really going to get that in this fight. We'll see. I know Green still got some power. We're not that far removed from Green knocking out Ally Quinta, right? That was a big win for him that I think people forget about, which was only in 2021. It wasn't that long ago. So it's a possibility there, but I just think we're going to see this go the distance, and it's going to be like a fun fight. That's kind of where I see this going.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I think if you are going to touch the sports books, like over is probably the best play. I think honestly I'll probably go to decision. But I will move on to this fight, Chiesa and Holland. Kind of a weird fight in my opinion. Like, I don't know. I mean, Chiesa hasn't fought in a while. I usually see him at the desk of the UFC events, in the past. But he's back. He's taking on Kevin Holland. Kevin Holland, I don't think has fought since Wonder Boy.
He
Yeah,
had the Ponzinibbio, I think was his last fight, wasn't it? Holland? Yeah, it was Ponzinibbio was his last one. He
was it
knocked him out in the
Pons?
third. Yeah, in the third round. That was in April of this year. Yeah.
Okay, so last time he fought was April. So now he's taking on Chiesa. Interesting fight because Chiesa is known a lot for like his jiu-jitsu. He's got some pretty good wrestling. But Holland's actually gotten a lot better on the ground throughout his career, and I don't think he gets enough credit for it. I mean, even when he fought Hamzat, he was hanging on for dear life, but he was not going down for a second. I mean, he's gotten a lot better on the ground, I feel like. It's an interesting fight. I think Holland has the advantage on the feet. I still give Chiesa the advantage on the ground. How do you see that fight playing out?
Well, I want to answer your first question, which was why did they put this fight together? I kind of have a feeling that they're kind of building up Holland a bit with this fight because you got Chiesa who's 35. You know, when fighters have layoffs and they're older, it doesn't typically go too well for them. You have to go, I think 2021 was the last time Chiesa fought. It was against Sean Brady and had a great third round, but did lose those first two, and Brady was able to get the decision victory there. I have my wonders about how this is going to go, not to mention the fact that, you know, Chiesa is a big guy. Like he used to fight at 155, which I don't know how he made that weight class. But you've got Kevin Holland, who was primarily fighting at middleweight. So I do wonder, like, is the strength going to be different in Holland's favor? That's kind of what I'm interested in. But, you know, I just think that Holland will probably win this. And I think it was kind of by design where you've got Chiesa, who's, like you said, transitioned more into the analyst role. I wouldn't be surprised if Chiesa loses this and that's it for him, just because, like, where is he going to go from here? He had a couple key losses, like the Luque loss was one that really stands out, was finished in the first round. He's lost to Brady. So I think this is just the way of like giving Holland an opponent where people know him, because we know about Chiesa being in the UFC for so long, but I think it's also one that's winnable for Holland as well, as he's still relatively young. Like, how old's Holland? 30, I think. He's kind of, he's just 30 years old. He'll be 31 in November. I think Holland takes this, but unless Chiesa's done something in camp that I don't know about and he's turned back the clock, I think Kevin Holland probably wins this.
Yeah, I actually picked Holland too to take this fight simply based on the fact of what you were saying. Fighters that are typically older in their careers on layoffs. I just like the younger fighter here. And I don't think that Holland's, how much better he's gotten on the ground, I don't think it's as big of a mismatch as people are thinking.
And I think people forget Holland's a black belt actually under Travis Lutter too. I actually forgot that too. Someone reminded me in the chat this week. So he can't be that bad at jiu-jitsu, right? If he's a black belt. Yeah,
exactly. And on the feet, I give him the advantage. Mm-hmm. So I just look at the fight as a whole, and I'm just like, I think Kevin Holland is probably just as good as him on the ground, if not maybe a little bit less. But on the feet, I think it is a big mismatch. I think Kevin Holland is the much better striker. So I'm going with Holland in that fight as well. I'll go on to this Michel Pereira and Stephen Wonderboy, and then we'll get to the last two fights. Sure. Michel Pereira and Stephen Wonderboy, that's a pretty interesting fight in itself, because I feel like both of them have a similar style in a sense. I like Wonderboy in this fight still. I just think his experience of fighting the top guys and having the same style, when you play into Wonderboy's style, not too many beat him. He's so good at what he does. And I think Michel Pereira is going to play his game, and I just think that it's going to go Wonderboy to Wonderboy on Saturday night. How do you see that fight playing out?
Well, I hate to bore your audience, but I agree with you. I know we're agreeing on pretty much everything. Maybe the next couple ones we won't. But yeah, I just think, like, to me, to put this in the most simplest terms possible, I just think Wonderboy is the better striker. And so if it will stay standing, unless Michel Pereira has been working on his wrestling, because we know that's how you beat Wonderboy, right? I mean, we've seen the catalyst of how to do this. Gilbert Burns and Bilal Muhammad, both successful in taking Thompson out that way. I just don't think we'll see that in this fight. And even if we do, I don't think Pereira's got the type of wrestling background that's going to be much of a threat to Wonderboy in that regard. Like, you got to think Wonderboy's been working on some takedown defense a little bit. So if it stays standing, like, if this was before the Kevin Holland fight, I might say, okay, maybe Pereira's got a shot a little bit more. But I just think that, like, he showed against Kevin Holland, who we just talked about his striking, Wonderboy outclassed him there. And I know Colin got injured early, but I just really feel like Thompson is still competing well at his age. I know he's in his 40s, but he can still get it done. And I think, like I said, it's going to stay standing. I think Thompson takes this one via decision as well. And another thing, I went back and looked, like, when was the last like knockout win for Pereira? It's been a while. He's typically been going the distance. I know he's been winning some of these fights, but this is a big jump up from, the likes of like Chaos Williams and some of the other names he's been fighting. And I'll never forget this sorry to interrupt. I just got to mention this. I was front row when he fought Tristan Connolly, and I could not believe he lost that fight. And I know Tristan very well. He's from my area where I live here in Vancouver, British Columbia. And, Tristan's a lightweight, and he beat Pereira just off fight IQ. That's how he beat him. And that will always stand out in my mind as a fight that Pereira literally had in the bag, and he couldn't do it.
Yeah, and, it goes back to Stephen Wonderboy, kind of like with the Bobby Green thing. The only knockout loss he's suffered in his career, I think, was to Anthony Pettis.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's hard to put him out. I do wonder, though, even though it's been some time, as an older fighter, how that last fight with Holland may affect him going forward. Because, I mean, that was a good fight. But I think both fighters did their fair share of the damage in that fight. I think they landed their big shots. And Wonderboy took some huge shots. So I do wonder how that's going to play out for him going forward. But I look at this matchup and I like Wonderboy as well. Yeah. But we'll move on. Alex Pereira, Jan Blachowicz. Now, this is a fun fight. Pereira had a lot of troubles, I would say, making 185. He always made it, but it just wasn't easy. He's coming off that loss to Adesanya, which was the perfect time for him to move up. Jan Blachowicz, I think he's getting closer to 40. He's still fighting really well, still trying to get back his championship. This is a good stand-up fight, but here's the thing. Here's the niche to it. Last time Izzy moved up to 205, he got Jan Blachowicz as well. Jan pulled out the wrestling card, and he looked really well doing it. Will Jan Blachowicz be successful wrestling Alex Pereira? Because to me, I don't want to say it's his only path to victory because he does have power in his hands, but I do favor Alex striking a little bit. But if Jan can wrestle, how much does that change the fight? And will he be able to do it for three rounds?
I think he will. I'm kind of banking on that. Like, you have to think, if Jan Blachowicz is fighting Pereira, why on earth would you try and stand and trade with a guy whose main weapon is knocking people out? Like, and another thing, like, I will say that I think Izzy and Pereira, in terms of who's bigger, it's Pereira for sure. So I don't know if Jan will have as easy of a time to taking him down as he did with Adesanya. But like, you just have to look at this from the simple perspective of like, Jan has way more ways to win this fight. It's knockout or bust for Pereira. Like, I don't even think he would win a decision here. I really feel like Jan's striking is up to par, where if it did go the distance, I think Jan would probably take it. I think Alex is going to load up for that big shot, and that's where Jan's going to take advantage. The other thing we got to talk about is that Pereira got knocked out, right? So how much, like, is this the right amount of time off for him after getting knocked out, after doing that tough weight cut? Like, that stuff adds up, right? Like, I don't think Jan Blachowicz could make 85. I know he said, I think, like, initially he's like, oh, I'd go down and fight Izzy at 85. But I mean, come on. I don't think that was ever going to happen with his frame, but he's a big guy for the weight class. We've seen him. I think another fight that people forget that happened that Jan was successful in of a fighter moving up from 85 is Luke Rockhold. Remember, he knocked him out in that fight. So I think, like, I haven't seen a lot of people talk about that. And Rockhold's a pretty big 85er as it is. So I think
you're right about that. I forgot about that. That is actually 100% correct. He did.
And do you remember what happened back then? Sorry to go down memory lane a little bit, but like, the idea was that Rockhold was going to be Blachowicz, and that was going to set up the Luke Rockhold John Jones fight, right? With that whole rivalry with DC, who was Rockhold's teammate,
and that to bed.
Yeah. And so, and Jan Blachowicz put an end to those plans, right? So I think Jan's going to be okay. And again, like, I know the last fight with Magomed Ankalaev wasn't exactly like amazing. Like, I think there's a reason we haven't heard a peep from Ankalaev, because I think the UFC's kind of like icing him a little bit for whatever reason. But I think Jan, like, in that fight, showed that, hey, look, he still got it. Even the Rakic fight, I know that ended in a bit of an injury. In that fight, he still looked good against a very dangerous opponent in Rakic. I think Blachowicz will win, but would I be shocked if Alex Pereira knocked him out? No, I'm not. I'm not naive to that, but I just think if we're looking at this on paper, you got to go Blachowicz here.
Guess what, audience? For the first time today, I'm going to be
disagreeing
with James Lynch.
Good. I'm
going to go with Alex Pereira in this fight. I just think that he has enough tools to keep it standing now. And I think keeping that extra weight on and not having to cut it is going to go in his favor a lot. I think the power is going to be more. I think it'll be easier to stop takedowns. He's been doing so much work with Glover Teixeira, which I think is going to help him tremendously. I know he was in his last fight as well. Didn't really need it, but I think it'll help him here for somebody that probably is going to try to do the wrestling. I like Pereira in this fight. I think the UFC, I never say the UFC will like somebody to win, but I think the whole point of this thing is that if Alex Pereira wins, that can give the UFC enough momentum to do this trilogy fight with Izzy. But I think if he wins this fight against Jan, okay, let me rephrase all that. He's going to have to beat Jan. Then he's going to have to go get the 205-pound belt. So he's got two huge tasks at hand. If he completes those, it's enough momentum to do the trilogy with Israel Adesanya.
Okay, I have a different theory. I think the UFC forced him up to 205. I think they saw what happened in that first fight and even the second fight, and they're going, we don't want this to happen again. Because if Adesanya lost that fight, he's screwed. He's in the Robert Whittaker territory, right? Like they don't need to do that. So I think it was very convenient that like Pereira, I know, talked about the tough weight cuts, but they very quickly announced that he was going up to 205. And I kind of wonder if they're doing that because let's be honest, what's better for business? Adesanya being the champ or Pereira, who I love him, great fighter, does have a big following, but Adesanya is the more marketable champion. I think they moved him up there. Not to mention, we got to mention that Pereira is actually not like a young fighter. He's like mid-30s, right? So I think they're like, hey, we got to get something else out of him. We'll give him Jan Blachowicz. If he beats Jan, good, we can do that fun fight at 205. But I don't think like 205 has been a carousel anyway. So I think for that, they don't mind having the chaos up there. But I think deep down, the UFC is like pretty happy that Izzy won that fight because I think, again, he's more marketable than Pereira is.
Yeah, he definitely is. Maybe you're right because now that I'm thinking about it, the night of, I'm pretty sure they said he was going up to 205
like right away. Dana didn't even give they didn't even give a chance for Pereira to like do anything. And granted, he was knocked out, but I just think like it was so quick that they're like, hey, he's going up. That Dana's like, yep, he's going to 205. It's like,
and they asked
suspicious.
Yeah. Who, I don't know if it was John Morgan or somebody asked Dana, will you do the trilogy? They're 1-1. And he was like, no.
Yeah.
I think he said it directly, like not a chance.
So listen, I get it. I'm not, conspiracy theories aside, like it probably wasn't great for him to fight at 85, but again, Adesanya is in that weird spot where if he had lost 2 in a row, he's like, again, he's in this spot where we already know he can't go to 205 and win. Like we saw that against Blachowicz. He can't move down to 170. So he's in this weird
like
spot.
In a spot that Kamaru's in.
Yeah. Or Max Holloway too at 45, right? Yeah. Same sort of thing.
Yeah, I agree with you. It does seem kind of like they were pushing that 205 thing on him, but I also think that they were doing that just because he was struggling to make the weight. I mean, you saw it. Yeah. He was still such a big dude when he was weighing in, don't get me wrong, and he looked good, but he did look sucked in. Like it was a lot because I think the dude walks at like 230. Oh,
yeah, big time. Yeah, no, he sort of talked about that. And by the way, I'll give you one more thing that kind of adds to your argument about picking Pereira. I mean, you mentioned Glover. Glover destroyed Jan Blachowicz. Jan Blachowic's worst night in years was against Glover Teixeira. There's got to be something to that. Now, granted, Glover submitted him and all that. I don't think we're going to see Pereira bring out this amazing jiu-jitsu, but I do think that's something that does work in Pereira's favor, that he has a guy that literally dominated Jan a couple fights ago, right? It wasn't even that long ago.
Yeah, I agree with you. That would be crazy if Pereira submitted him, by the way.
I wonder what the odds are on that. That's got to be crazy because, like, I think it's knockout or bust, right? It's
got to be like plus 25 at least.
Something nuts like that. So yeah, that's crazy.
But James, this brings us to the main event: Justin Gaethje versus Dustin Poirier 2 for the BMF championship. I like this fight. If there's two people that need to fight for the BMF title, if they have to have this championship right now in the UFC, I don't think there's two other people that fit the description better than Justin Gaethje and Dustin Poirier. Like, this is going to be an exciting fight. Here's why. And I'll give you my breakdown. Dustin Poirier, back when he fought Justin Gaethje the first time, was, in my opinion, just a couple levels ahead of Justin in terms of his striking, his movement, his experience. People forget that this was Justin Gaethje's third fight in the organization. still very young in his MMA career. Dustin, Justin was landing a lot of leg kicks and stuff like that. But here we are 5 years later. Dustin Poirier's changed a lot in some of his ways in his game. He's gotten so much better in certain aspects of his game. But Justin Gaethje has also went back to work on his game over the last 5 years and has just gotten so much better. Just to name a few things with Justin Gaethje, I think his footwork's better. His ability to use his jab is better. His ability not to shell up and just take 3, 4, 5 punches at a time and then throw a leg kick, which are damaging, by the way. I even think his leg kicks are better. When he's in the pocket, I think his uppercuts are better. There's a lot of things that Justin Gaethje specifically has done since that fight. I think Poirier has always been good. He's gotten a little bit better at everything he does. But when I look at the two fighters, I think Justin Gaethje has made tremendous amount of improvements, because I think from the first time they fought, Dustin didn't really have to make a ton of improvements. Dustin Poirier was always great, but Justin was such a raw guy that just would come in balls to the walls, just swing for the fences. But I think now he's a little bit different. I mean, his fight versus Fiziev was really impressive. Dustin's finish over Michael Chandler was very impressive. They fought around a lot of the same guys. So you get the point. I'll make my prediction. I think this time around it's going a different way. I'm going with Justin Gaethje. I don't want to say he's going to knock out Poirier, because I think the harder you hit Poirier and the madder you make him throughout the fight, the better he gets. So I don't know how he's going to beat Poirier, but I'm going to go with Justin Gaethje this time around.
And I'm going the other way. So there we go. We end on two disagreements there, which is perfect. Look, it's hard not to look at that fight with Gaethje and Fiziev and go, man, because that shocked me. I thought Fiziev was going to beat him. I thought it was old school versus young. He had the layoff coming in, all that stuff, right? So he goes out there and he takes care of business. And I just was, that was just such an incredible performance. Now, Dustin Poirier, say what you want about Conor. He took some shots from Conor. There was this whole thing for years about Dustin Poirier's got a bad chin. Remember, Michael Johnson knocked him out. And then he had, obviously losses at featherweight as well. But he took some good Conor shots, and the durability is interesting. It's a little bit concerning that, from what I hear, he's not. I've sort of, as far as his training and stuff, I've kind of sort of heard through the grapevine that he hasn't necessarily prepped for elevation maybe as much as you'd like. So that could be a factor, because Justin trains in Colorado, right? So that's obviously an advantage for him. But I think overall, I think Poirier is the better fighter, and he's already got the win from him before. Now, if you go watching that first fight, you mentioned it there, a couple fights in for Gaethje's UFC career. So Poirier did sort of have that advantage, but it was close, right? Poirier got the win, but I mean, it was one of those fights that was pretty even leading up. I just think that I think when it really comes down to it, I just see Poirier being able to take some of the shots from Gaethje, going a little bit harder and going out there and edging out a decision. I am telling you guys this now. I think this fight goes the distance. I know that's crazy, but you look at how their two styles. I just don't think that Poirier is going to get knocked out. And I don't think Poirier is going to knock out Gaethje either. He might, but I just again, you have to go. I forget the last time Gaethje's actually been knocked out in a fight, but I just think it's so even flip a coin. And I would also even argue maybe you get a situation where it goes the distance and maybe it goes to the wrong guy. So that's what I think. I think it could be that close in this rematch where they both improve so much, but it's who's improved more? We're going to have to see. And I just think that we have such a small sample size of Gaethje's improvements in terms of physique. I know he beat Chandler as well, but I just think it's such a small sample size that I'm not ready to pull the trigger on Gaethje. Whereas I know with Poirier, other than Oliveira and Khabib, he's looked pretty damn good overall. So I'm going Poirier decision on this one, but it would not shock me in the least. Gaethje wins.
I know you probably have maybe seen it, and I wish more fighters would do stuff like this just so you can see what they're doing. But Justin Gaethje drops these road to Utahs and these road to, wherever he's fighting. And I've tuned into every episode, all 6 of them that he has, because every Monday he drops one. I know Poirier is working hard, and that's why I'm saying I wish he would drop one. But Justin's working really hard for this fight. How many times he's mentioned in those videos, this is a fight that I need to get back. I can't, as a competitor, I can't go 0-2 against this guy. I would love to see Poirier have put out some videos. I want to see what he's doing over there at American Top Team, but some interesting stuff there. I've watched them all. but I just think he's made enough improvements to get it done this time, and that's why I'm swinging towards Justin Gaethje. Now, if you'd asked me in 2018, I would have been like, I'm going to swing Dustin Poirier's side because I think Justin's just not ready for a guy like Dustin yet. 3 fights into his UFC career, but now I think it's different. He's fought some of the best, been in there with some of the best, and I just think that he's made the improvements with Trevor Whitman and his team to come out here and get this done. And no matter what you want to say or who you pick, it's in the back of each fighter's mind that this is probably the last chance that they're going to have at getting a title shot. They're both
100%.
34 years old. So after this fight, the loser is going to go do money fights or they're done, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I completely, actually, I've been asked a bunch on my streams. It's like, do you think maybe the loser will retire? Absolutely. I could see that happening. They've done it all, and they've had title shots. They've had opportunities. Both have lost Oliveira. Both have lost to Habib. Like, it's crazy the paths they've had since they first fought, the amount of common opponents, right? So it's really interesting.
James, do you have anything else for the people?
No, just thank you for having me on and keep up the great work. I always tell you this. I watch all your stuff, and it's cool to see the newer wave of media come through. And just appreciate you having me on, man. I know you're so big on YouTube, but if you want, tell the people that watch everything's Lynch on Sports. It's easy. Yeah, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Threads, all Lynch on Sports, LYNCH on Sports. YouTube, same thing. YouTube.com/Lynch on Sports. You're right. I work for a bunch of different companies. It's much easier just to follow me on social media, and then I post everything on there, and it's all in one spot. So yeah, there you go. But yeah, thanks so much for having me on, man. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining me. It's been a long time in the making, and I had a lot of fun talking over this card with you. I'm glad we can come on a couple of disagreements finally.
There we go. Yeah, it's boring. Otherwise, we agree on everything, right? So.
But anyways, I'm Cade Morehouse. This is James Lynch. We are out.